Hey everybody, welcome back to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, learningtomix.com, and here on my YouTube channel. In this timeout, we're going to take a look at the CTC-1 from Presonus. This is their Console Shaper Pro plugin, and we're going to take a look at its feature set, show you some examples on how it sounds across tracks, and the basic philosophy around the plugin. So before we get to that, if you like what you see in this video, hit that subscribe button below. It helps me out tremendously. And also go out to facebook.com/homerecordingmadeeasy and follow me there. And for more tips, tricks, concepts, and training around all aspects of home recording, mixing, and mastering, always check out homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Check out the Quick Mix series and the Made Easy series. Those training courses will absolutely help you make better mixes and masters and recordings in your home studio, I promise. And if you'd like to also dive down deep into the art of mixing and get some high quality premium mixing training, as well as join a community of like-minded individuals who want to get better at the craft of mixing so they can make better productions in their home studio, whether you're a recording musician or an audio engineer or both, head on over to learningtomix.com. We have a great community over there. Myself and Pete Woj from mixbetternow.com have created this mixing training membership website. It is super cool. We're all using Studio One, Pete and myself, a lot with Studio One plugins, as well as a bunch of third-party plugins. And the most important thing is you get high quality training at a super affordable price. It's the best deal anywhere you'll find when it comes to the craft of mixing, and you get a 30-day money back guarantee. So head on over to learningtomix.com and check me out over there. Now that all that housekeeping is done, let's head on over into Studio One here and let's take a look at the CTC-1. So, excuse me. Now, a couple of things we want to note right off the bat. First of all, this is only compatible with the professional version of Studio One. I don't believe it's compatible with the artist version. As a matter of fact, I'm almost certain of it, but you can check out the presonus.com website. And this is also not something that comes stock as a stock plugin. This is an add-on plugin for $79 US as of the recording of this video. The original Console Shaper, or the first version of the Console Shaper prior to the CTC-1, looks a little like this. Let me show you that plugin quickly. This particular plugin comes standard with the Pro version of Studio One, the professional version. This is the first version of the Console Shaper. Since that time, they've put out the Console Shaper Pro, or the CTC-1, which we're going to look at today. And the difference between the two is the CTC-1 has 3 different console models: the classic, the tube, and the custom, whereas the original Console Shaper only has 1, which is more like the custom, their own kind of creation. So this has 3 consoles versus the 1. This is an $80 or $79.99 add-on pack. You can check it out on the Presonus website, thepresonus.com/shop, and you can check it out there. And again, you have to have the Pro version in order to use this. So you may be asking yourself, well, what is the Console Shaper? Well, the Console Shaper Pro is something that Presonus, again, is diving into now recently, which I really tip my hat to them for, is they're getting more into this analog style plugin emulations, like a lot of third-party manufacturers like Universal Audio and Waves and Slate Digital. They all make plugins now that emulate some of the classic gear that you would find in analog studios. And Presonus is one of the first DAW companies that I'm aware of that actually tried now to not only do their stock plugins like every other DAW does. They're very basic kinds of plugins, but now they're getting into what they're calling state space modeling, or old analog, gear emulation plugin modeling is what I call it, but they're calling it state space modeling. Basically what they've done in this plugin is they has modeled 2 separate consoles and then came up with one of their own, which is kind of a custom console, to give your digital recordings in your DAW a more analog flavor. Now, this can be kind of, if you want to say, well, what is this kind of compared to as far as other plugins? This is similar to what something like the Slate VCC would do, but it's used a little differently, or like the Waves NLS. Basically, it's giving you the sound of the console across of your tracks in your DAW. So let's take a look at the layout of this plugin, and then we'll get into sound examples. So here in front of us, we have the CTC-1. And we have 3 separate models. As I said, we have the classic model, which kind of looks like and is modeled after a famous British console. You can draw from that what you will. And the tube model is modeled after a famous tube style console that is still in service today in one of the most famous studios in London. You can imagine what that would be. And then we have a custom mono, which is kind of Presonus's take on maybe some of the finer features of different consoles, and they kind of made their own kind of creation of a console. Okay, it's not modeled after any one specific console. So we have classic, we have tube, and we have custom, and as you'll hear in a second, they sound completely different from each other, which would make sense, right? So if we start on the classic, you'll see that all the controls are exactly the same, and I'm going to walk you through the controls here and kind of tell you what they do, and then we're going to jump into some quick sound samples. So first off, we have this drive section on the left hand side here. So this is just pretty much driving signal into the plug-in. The more drive you push into a console, the more kind of non-linearities and a harmonic distortion you're going to get, and kind of coloring you're going to get to the signal. Okay, so that's what this does, and we have a drive. We could turn that on or off. Now we have this boost here. This boost will give you an additional, I believe it's 18 dB of gain. So not only can you drive this up to 18 dB, but then you can automatically, if you had a really low signal, you can boost it 18 dB right off the bat. So you want to be careful about that. You don't want to overdrive it too much. Okay, so that's the drive section. In the noise section, we have a noise gate here, which the more you turn up the noise, you turn on the noise button here, the more you turn this on, the more coloration and kind of noise floor you're going to get, like what would sound like on like a tape machine. You have that noise floor, that hiss kind of in the background. That's what you're going to get from this. And then we also have a noise gate button, which can be helpful if you have a song that has like a lot of quiet passages between vocal lines or instrument lines where there's just kind of no audio at all. There's kind of a space. The noise gate will help take away some of that noise that's there, so it's not too intrusive to the listener. And then when the audio comes back into play, it'll have that noise here as well. So that can be kind of helpful as well. So having a little bit of noise is going to kind of give you that analog hiss and that kind of tape hiss kind of a feel. Okay. We have a crosstalk section. Now what crosstalk is going to do, and I'll demonstrate this in a few seconds, is this is going to allow us to, for example, if we have this on, let's say, a kick track, and we turn up the crosstalk, and right next to that is, in our console view, would be a kick and, let's say, a snare track. By turning up the crosstalk, what that's going to do, it's going to allow bleed in from the adjacent tracks to the track that this is on, or that the bus that this is on. Okay, so you're going to get some bleed over from the tracks that are right next to or in close proximity to the track or buses that you have this plugin on, if that makes sense. And again, that just kind of emulates kind of really what goes on in a console. You're going to have a little bit of bleed over, which is kind of the overall vibe of what would happen with a real console. Then you have this character button, and what character is going to do, it's just going to add more color and more tone. Okay, it's just kind of going to give you a different tonal palette. And then lastly, you have the master, which is going to allow you to turn up or turn down the overall volume of the plugin. And as you can see on all three, even though they look different, the controls are exactly the same. So for example, if I were to turn up the drive here on the classic and then switch over to the tube, the drive control is going to be right in the same spot. It doesn't reset back to 0, which is really helpful if you just want to audition between the three consoles real quickly on your source material to hear the differences, which is what we're going to do now. Now, on the console and the console shaper, the original version, and also the CTC-1, the console shaper Pro, this is not a plugin that's designed to go on each individual track, like something like the Slate Digital VCC or the Waves NLS. Okay, this is designed to go on the buses, okay, on either the master bus, which you can see over here at the top of my main outs here that I have colored in this kind of pink color. You can see this is called a mix effects engine. This is part of their mix effects engine, where only on buses is this going to be, you're going to be able to place this. So you can see here I have the CTC-1, and if you click this down arrow, I can either pick the original console shaper, and they also have a tape multi-track tape machine, which I did in another video. Okay, so that's only going to happen on the buses. It's not on the individual tracks. So right now, I only have this on the master bus. Okay, and we're going to show you what it sounds like. Now, what I have going on here is I have down here in brown a drum kit. I have a bass guitar, and I have a couple of electric guitars, and then I have a Rhodes piano. Everything else is turned down just to keep this simple. all of those tracks are being routed over to their buses. Okay, so we have a drum bus, a bass bus, guitar bus, and a keyboards bus for the roads. Right now, I don't have the CTC on the buses. We'll get to that in a second. From the buses, they're going over to the main outs. So I only have one instance of this plugin on. So let's go ahead and let's bypass this. Let's play back the source material so you can hear what it sounds like with no plugins on it. The only plugins that I have activated on the drums is auto align, the correct phase. There's no other plugins activated at all. So this is before. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of turn off all the controls here so nothing is even dialed in. But then I'm going to unbypass the plugin and cycle through the 3 consoles so you can hear what it sounds like when you just run signal through the plugin without tweaking any of the dials. Make sense? Okay, here we go. So we're going to start with it off and then we're going to cycle through. Okay, so right away what you should hear is that there is some tonal shift that happens when you just run signal through this. Now this British style here, the classic is going to sound a lot more subtle, and as we get to the tube you can hear that it gets kind of a mid-range, kind of a presence, and then when you go to the custom it sounds more warm, a little bit more scooped, a little more hi-fi sounding, okay? And this is before we tweaked any of the dials. So let's just start on the classic and let's just go ahead and let's just do a little bit of drive here. So I'm going to push up the drive to maybe 12 noon and I'm going to show you what the drive kind of does, and maybe what I'll do is I'll do it on the tube because it's a little bit more audible. So let's just play with the drive control and see what that does. Now again, this is on the master bus only, not individual tracks. So you can hear when I take the drive on and off, you can hear the spike in audio a little bit, how it pushes a little bit more, it gets a little bit more gritty. But again, it's subtle, and it's supposed to be subtle. It's not going to be this massive, massive change, especially when we're only using one instance of this, okay? These are subtle things. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's turn up the noise a little bit and see what that does. Add a little bit of that kind of hissing, kind of tape hiss, kind of that noise floor here. Okay, so as I turn this noise on and off, you can hear the hiss a little bit. I don't know how it comes across on YouTube, but there is a very subtle hiss in the background here. Okay, now let's do with the crosstalk and see what that's going to kind of do. Okay, so now when I turn up the crosstalk all the way to 100%, what you can hear is you hear like a lead guitar playing in the background. If you look at overall at my tracks, that lead guitar is muted right now. It's guitar 2. We're not playing it right now. It's kind of bleeding through. Okay, so that's kind of what the crosstalk is going to do. It kind of takes the tracks and it kind of, bleeds them into each other. So you're hearing a little bit of that lead guitar here. That's before. Okay, so you hear that all of a sudden when we bypass the plugin, it kind of falls a little bit flat and it gets a little bit more darker sounding, and this gets a nice presence to it. So now again, now that we've tweaked some of the dials a little bit, let's cycle through the 3 and see what we have. Okay, pretty radical difference between the 3. So it adds a nice little vibe to it. And again, if I take the plugin away, and let's just stay on the tube for a second because it seems to be the most audible. Let's bypass it and we'll just take it in and out. Okay, very nice. Does a nice job. Now, this is just, again, on the master bus. So now, the other thing that we look at the top right-hand corner here, we have this little button here called pass-through. You can see I could turn it on and off. And what I want to show you is that what this does is when we have our pass-through engaged or lit, if you take a look down here, and I highlighted my track here, my main outs, this kind of pink color for a reason. If you look right above the mute button on this track, you can see that amber or that little pink color dot, which represents the main out track. And if you look at all the tracks next to it, even my parallel tracks, all my bus channels don't have it, right? But my individual tracks do here. Okay, and if you look at all of the other tracks here, they all have this pink on, and when I turn this off, you can see the pink dot goes away above the mute button, right? So what this is doing is giving you a visible representation of what tracks are actually going through the plugin. Because this is on the master bus, all of my tracks eventually get routed to the master bus, so they're all traveling through this plugin. So if I turn it off, you'll see that it's not going through the plugin. If you use the pass-through, it's going through the plugin, which is typically what you'd want to do. Okay, so this is just on the master bus. Now, some of what you can do here and what kind of the power of this is, again, I have like all my drums, for example, being routed through a drum bus, okay? And right now I have nothing activated, so I can also add this to my bus as well. I can say, okay, let me put it on here, and let me go to the same thing here, and we can now tweak the bus, just the drums, through this plugin. Okay, now you can see that as soon as I put the CTC on here, you can see right above the mute button, you can see the little pink dot here. That means, again, that all my drums, because my pass-through is on, if I turn that off here, if I turn the pass-through off, what should happen, and it does, all the drums go away, right? The drum tracks don't have the little pink dot anymore. If I turn it on, it's just, oh no, excuse me, it's just going to have it on the bus itself. That's right, you can see it's here on the bus, okay? Because I also have it on the master out. So if I turn off the pass-through on the master out, okay, which I just did here, okay, and now if I were to take it off the master out, you'll see that it's still on the drum bus, okay? And then if I scroll down to my drum tracks, because the pass-through is not lit, okay, if I turn the pass-through on, it's not going to be on the individual tracks. Now, why is that? Oh, because the tracks are being routed through the bus, and now there's an instance of it on the bus. So if I take it off the bus and just route it through the main outs, now you'll see the little pink dot come back, and you do. Okay, that's why, because these tracks are being routed through a bus, okay? I know it's a little confusing. You can read the manual more about it. Typically, I always keep the pass-through on, is what I'm trying to tell you. So if I were to go over here and I were to put it on my bus, okay, and we go over to the tube setting, let's just tweak our drums a little bit here and see what we get. And what I'll do is I'll mute the bass and I'll mute the electric guitar and the keyboard. So we're just listening to drums. And we could turn up the drive a little bit. You hear how I turn on the boost, how it distorts the kick. You can hear the lead vocals bleeding through. I'll turn off the master bus instance for now. Let's turn on the noise a little. Give us a little noise, a little crosstalk. And a little character. It's before. After. Now if I turn it back on the master, okay, so that's on the drum bus. Now when I turn the master out instance of this on, you can hear some vocals bleeding through. Why? Because I have this crosstalk turned up. So you're going to hear that track bleed through. So you have to play on how much you really want there. It's probably better that's a little more subtle. Okay, I'm trying to exaggerate these settings so you can hear this over YouTube. So now what if I put the CTC on the bass as well? And let's see what we got here. Let's go over to the tube setting to keep things consistent. We'll unmute the bass here. We'll drive that bass a little. Turn it up a little. Let's get a little noise happening. Get a little. And we'll cycle through. Now on the classic, you can hear that it distorts a little bit more. It gets a little more gritty with the boost, okay? Because it's a different characteristic than the tube, not as distorted. Bypassed. It's a little thicker sounding. Okay, now let's go over to our guitars again. Let's take our two, we'll bring in our little lead guitar here as well, and we'll put this on the electric guitar bus. And then we'll turn them all on and off so you can hear what the differences are. Okay, and lastly, let's go to our keyboards and put this on here as well. Now, what you can also do is you can have, you know, say the classic on your bass and the tube on your guitars and the custom on your drums. If that's what you want to do, you can mix and match. It's totally cool. I try to like to keep them all the same because, again, part of kind of the, you know, of kind of copying or emulating what happened in an analog studio when you were running through a desk or an old console. If you had a Neve or a British style console, you're running everything through there, all your instrumentation. You didn't have 3 or 4 different consoles in your studio, if you know what I mean. But what's great about the plugin in digital technology is you can run whatever the heck you want, and there are no rules. Whatever sounds good, it is good, because at the end of the day, when you mix it down, the listener's not going to know the difference. But I'm just trying to keep it consistent here. So here we are on the keyboards. Okay, it's back to the main out. So now if we were to just take them all away at once, you can't show the thing about these mix engine plugins, you can't highlight all the tracks like you can with a regular insert and turn one off and they all turn on. They only turn off one at a time, which is no big deal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start playing this back, and I'll turn off the 4 across the buses and on the master bus, and then I'll flip them back on, and you can hear the overall accumulative effect of what this is doing. So this is started with it on. So it really does make a nice. It's somewhat subtle, but it's not so subtle that you can barely hear it. It's not overhyped, which is what I like about it. And it's the same thing to go with like the VCC from by Slate Digital and the NLS by Waves. They're subtle, and they're supposed to be subtle. So again, the way to really use this or any kind of these console emulation plugins is you set them up across all your buses and on your master bus before you start dropping a bunch of plugins on there. And you just get a nice foundation where you get the sound enhanced and get things kind of sounding good before you start adding your other plugins, tape machines, and all that other stuff. So this is a great way to take an absolutely raw recording, and just by dropping on these across your buses and on your master out, you can instantly hear how you can enhance the sound and start to get that analog kind of a vibe. It's a really, really cool plugin. And for $79.99, $80 to get 3 different consoles, that's pretty good. And over time, I'm sure Presonus is going to come up with even more emulations. I think this really sounds great. And again, I really tip my hat to Presonus. I've been taking a look at a lot of their analog style plugin emulations lately. You can check my YouTube channel. You'll see I've done reviews on the RC500 and on the VT1 or VT-1 and now the Console Shaper. They've really done a great job. And again, being a DAW company and also a hardware manufacturer, they've built hardware before they started getting into DAWs, and they understand hardware and they understand how to emulate that hardware. And for them to jump into this end and kind of somewhat compete with the Waves of the world and the Universal Audios of the world and such, I think is really, really great. And it's only going to get better over time. And it really allows the Presonus user, Studio One user, who only usually works with stock plugins and doesn't want to go out and buy a bunch of Universal Audio hardware, or doesn't have the budget to go out and spend a bunch of money and a bunch of third-party plugins, and wants to keep everything under the Presonus roof, if you will. This is a great option for you, and it's super, super affordable. $80 for 3 consoles is great. So I hope you like this first look at the CTC-1. Again, if you have Studio One Pro, go on out to the Presonus shop and check it out and download it for $80 and play with it. Again, put it on your buses, put it on your master out, tweak around with the controls, and get your mixes starting to sound more like an analog mix. And then if you want to even further that, you could go ahead and you can purchase their channel strip collection as well, which I did some other videos on my YouTube channel, where you could take the VT-1 or the RC500 and pair that up with this, and now you really have a great analog style kind of a flavor to your mix right out of the gate without a lot of work. Real simple to use plugins. So join me next time when we take a look at another Presonus analog style plugin emulation. My name has been David with Home Recording Made Easy and LearningToMix.com. Again, hit that subscribe button. Please subscribe, share this video with others, and please head out to LearningToMix.com, because all of the stuff I'm teaching on my YouTube channel really kind of will all come to a head at LearningToMix.com, where you can really get some high quality, high level mixing training for all levels. Whether you're an absolute beginner or an experienced audio engineer or recording musician, you will find a ton of value at LearningToMix.com. Go check it out right now. Try it out for 30 days. You'll be glad you did, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, guys.